If you're looking for new ideas, if you want a company that truly can refreshingly find the next big thing, it all starts with customer obsession. Now, I'm going to use the word customer a lot, and in some industries, customer is not the word. You might use the word client or patient or partner, but the concept of using the word customer is that customer implies a level of service. And internally, even in your own organization, you should think about customer service even for those in different departments who you're delivering your ideas to and serving. So we're going to use the word customer, but I want you to keep a broad mind as we think truly about how to get new ideas, how to connect, and how to truly help those that we interact with the most. Today, we'll call them the customer. What would it take to get people to stop littering? You've seen signs that say stop littering, and sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. But pretend this was your job. And in Texas, the government was trying to figure out how to get people to stop littering. And they thought about all sorts of different ideas, and then they came up with this campaign. And by just showing you the image of this tier, you might already know what I'm talking about. The campaign was with Iron Eyes Cody, and as he saw somebody litter from their car, a tear came out of his eye, and that made such an intense connection that the Keep America Beautiful campaign continues to be one of the most memorable to this day. Iron Eyes Cody made an emotional connection with his tear. But here's the catch. Iron Eyes Cody had no measurable impact on the amount people were actually littering. Almost no impact, no measurable impact at very least. So does an emotional connection matter if it works just a little bit on everyone? And the reality is there's a deeper level of connection than just an emotional connection. I like to use what I call a continuum of impact for persuasion, and it has 4 different levels of convincing. At the most basic level, we could be functional and tell people don't litter. At the next level, you could give a little bit of a benefit, a motivation, a reward, a fine, a discount, and you could basically try to motivate people through something that is direct. Maybe it works, but maybe it's transactional and does not repeat. The next level of connection would be an emotional connection, which we do indeed remember, and an emotional connection can stick with us for life. But it doesn't necessarily create action. To create action, you need to make a cultural connection. A cultural connection is a little bit different. So let's reapproach this. To make a cultural connection, you would deeply need to know the answer to this question. Who litters? Who exactly litters? What's the seed of the people that are littering in Texas? Who's littering out the side of their car window? But who do you think litters in Texas? Is it males or females? Do you think it's young males or do you think it's old males? For those young males littering in Texas, do you think that they drive cars or do they drive trucks? But actually, after doing the research, we learned you're absolutely right. The people who litter in Texas are males, they're young, and they drive pickup trucks. And the organization that did this, GSD&M, when they looked into all of this, they also realized these young males, they like to drink a little beer, they might have a gun rack in their truck, it is Texas after all, but more importantly, they have a king of my world lifestyle. So put yourself inside that pickup truck and ask yourself if the crying actor on television is convincing you to stop littering. And as a little side note, that actor was actually an Italian actor named Esperanza Cody, not even an American, trying to convince you to stop littering. Doesn't really make the same connection. So the team behind this came up with a different campaign, and the campaign led to a slogan, "Don't mess with Texas." Trademark. That's my favorite part. Many of you have probably heard "Don't mess with Texas," but you might not know this is a trademarked ad slogan. These words were used together for the very first time to get young males in Texas to stop littering out of their pickup trucks. The very first ad had a couple Dallas Cowboy football stars on the side of the highway. One of them sees a can hit the ground. He bends over, picks up the can, looks at the camera, smashes it against his head, and says, "Don't mess with Texas. If you litter, you're messing with Texas. Don't." Okay, I won't litter. Wow. Now, if you compare the two campaigns, it's pretty drastic as a difference, but I want you to compare not as yourself. I want you to put yourself in the end customer, the target demo's truck, and think about which campaign stops you from wanting to throw a beer can out of your pickup truck window. And the answer becomes pretty clear. And if Esperado de Cody, Iron Eyes Cody, had no impact on littering, well, guess what? Don't mess with Texas. Beat the goal of having a 5% decrease in litter. Instead of hitting the goal of a 5% decrease, there was a 72% decrease in the amount of litter on the side of the road. And of course, that slogan is now synonymous with Texas. Now, I'm taking this out of the corporate world for this example. I wanted to pick something human to really show the power of making a connection, and that you can even compel people to do something that's difficult to do or choose if they have a cultural connection. In all industries, for all tasks, for all organizations, innovation and creativity starts by observing your customers, your clients, your constituents, your patrons, whatever your word is, whatever your role is. It starts by needing to get that level of deep understanding. It matters for everyone in your organization, from the CEO down to the newest hire. And while it could mean things like focus groups, surveys, and interviews, often it's about trying to observe your customers in their zone, interacting with them, watching what they choose, observing usage, and just listening. Ethnography at its finest to gain deeper understanding. When Escalade came out, it was the greatest selling SUV of all time. I had the chance, right when that happened, to interview the C-level, who was head of design at General Motors. And I asked him what to do. And he said, well, people had all sorts of ideas on how to change and how to take advantage of the new popularity, but he wasn't sure if he should do that. So he personally went in Detroit, where GM is based, and he went to what he perceived as more dangerous neighborhoods than where he might normally feel comfortable. And he looked for the Escalades, and he just started trying to ask questions. And what he found was that everybody was so excited to talk to him about their car. They were excited to meet the designer. And he was so excited, he made buddies and he rode around with them and he learned so much, but he also learned not to mess it up. And they made very few choices that changed the design over the next decade, and it remained the leading SUV. At Fast Company, when they started losing subscribers, the editors started actually calling the people that were canceling their subscriptions. The CEO of Continental Airlines, which of course merged with United, he would actually personally fly in economy unannounced just to see how he was treated, to make sure he was treated the same as the other patrons. I used her name in this case, but when I wrote Exploding Chaos 12 years ago, I included the example that Michelle Glass at Starbucks used to actually take her teams and they would go to a dozen cafes in a day. She would take them to Paris or Italy, where coffee culture is much bigger, and they'd go to a dozen cafes, one after the other, after the other, after the other, just to try and understand what made cafe culture in different places so important. And the reason I used Michelle Glass's name is because that's a part of her career story 15, 20 years ago, but she's continued to have success with those ideals, and she's actually been promoted on and is now CEO of Kohl's, the giant American retailer. Pretty cool. My own example, though, with an ethnographic approach to innovation happened when I was doing a case at Stanford where our project was a design thinking project for Arco gas station stores. And the goal that our team had for the client was to figure out, how do you reinvent the gas station store? So I could do this without going to a gas station in my head. I could make a gas station better. They're ugly, everything's all gross, clean it up. I could figure it out. And who goes to a gas station? I don't know, you tell me. Who goes to a gas station? Is it one group of people? Or is it everyone? I mean, I think it's kind of everyone. But we decided to go and hang out at gas station stores for 6 hours as part of the research. We sat there just watching people go to gas stations, walking around like weirdos with noteboards, taking down notes about your gas purchasing behavior. It looked weird. There's a bit of thinking involved in deciding to hang out in a store or actually spend 6 hours. And I go off topic kind of there because it's a human experience. Tell your team they're going to go work at a gas station for 6 hours. But when we were there, we started to notice a pattern. It wasn't that everyone goes for gas, sure they do, but there was one demographic that took it a little bit differently. the teenage boy. And when they show up, they pull up in their parentally sponsored Honda Civic. They're excited about it. Not one, but two, three, four, even five of them hop out of the car to go in and purchase. Wow, they love it in there. How much is this Red Bull? It's the new one. It's $6. That's expensive. They don't care. Why? Because they group shop, they're excited to buy our products, and they're price insensitive because they're shopping with your money. But look at that demographic. Oh my gosh, that's like the most ideal group to actually target. So we made a prototype store and we physically assembled it in a week, just rough. And we called it Rockstar Fuel. And it had everything you could imagine that would insult your mother or mine because it was targeted towards teenage boys. But we brought in real people to react to it from the street. And when they did, I was shocked by how the teenage boys loved it. There's nowhere they would ever otherwise go for gas or tell their parents to go for gas. However, I interviewed a woman, and she's a 55-year-old woman, and I said, what do you think about this store? And I thought she'd say she was insulted or that she thought it was, not targeted to her. But she said, oh, it's fine. I don't care. It's good. I said, what do you mean it's good? She goes, well, it's dirty, but in a different way. And she goes, actually, I just go to pick up gas. I don't really care. I just go to whatever station is closest. And yet for the teenage boys in the store, there's nowhere else they would ever otherwise fuel. And there's a bit of reality there because with your own products and services, there's a little bit of a shocking reality that many people just work with you because you're there. Your product or service was just kind of what they needed. But there's another group that finds you irresistible, and that's what you want to find out to make a cultural connection with them, because culture eats strategy for breakfast. To sum up some of the tactics here that could help you along your way, find ways to answer phones. When I was working at the bank, we got our executives and C-levels to spend the day in the customer complaint center to actually take the phone calls. You'd be surprised how quickly that gives people a sense of grounding and reality and how quickly it caused certain problems to be fixed. Consider hiring your customer. At Trent Hunter, we hired Kareth Middlemass, who was one of our very first client research customers when she was working at Nestle and later Loblaws, and we brought her into our office, and for half a year she helped us just refine and make our custom research better for our clients. You could work at kiosks. For my own team when I was at the bank, I actually got my team to work in the kiosks that you saw at shopping malls, and we had a breakthrough that resulted in a product line that grew to $1 billion, but that breakthrough didn't come from the market research, it came from what we experienced talking to real people. You can interview lost customers like Fast Company did, hang out in stores, or simply challenge the belief that you already know your customer. The workshop questions for this part would be, what does your customer actually purchase from you? What is it actually, though? And if you think even more deeply, what is their end objective? But push harder on that. What is it really? What do they really want from you? Why? And the deeper you get, the further you'll get from trying to tell people to stop littering, and the closer you'll get to knowing how to make a deep cultural connection like don't mess with Texas. That ends our lesson on customer obsession.